Meantime, NVIDIA denying reports yesterday that it received a subpoena from the U.S. Justice Department. A spokesman for the company sending a comment and statement to Jim Cramer regarding the antitrust concerns, saying, quote, NVIDIA wins on merit as reflected in our benchmark results and value to customers, and customers can choose whatever solution is best for them. We have inquired with the U.S. Department of Justice and have not been subpoenaed. Nonetheless, we're happy to answer any questions regulators may have about our business. Shares of that stock up, but not up so much on the back of that news. I don't know if that means that people don't believe that there's not a subpoena in the works or that there's some other kind of thing. Or does it really mean that the stock never moved the first time around on the back of the subpoena?
Because all of that stuff happened before the subpoena news was reported by Bloomberg. And that had a lot of people wondering, well, was that news leaked? Yesterday we were asking.
Right, that was the big question, whether it was leaked.
Maybe it wasn't that at all. Maybe it was something more broad because, again, I was looking at the action on that. And with NVIDIA shares down, that would make sense on the subpoena. But all of their competitors, you think, would have gone up on it. But what really happened in trading was all of the stocks
everybody got, right, it was a washout.
Kind of knocked down with all of those issues. So I'm watching this very closely. Again, the pushback coming from that, I was listening a little to Bloomberg this morning, and I think they were saying, well, maybe regulators were asking questions, and sometimes that's called a subpoena, but it sounded like they were backtracking around some of those issues, too.
Maybe he comments on NVIDIA. Just kidding. But it's become, as I said in my tweet this morning, I mean, like, well, how's NVIDIA doing? I mean, NVIDIA is now, I thought that yesterday it would have peaked because it seemed like that for a moment we were focused on other things. But no, when you see it on the ticker in the morning and you see that it just trades down on every piece of weak news, you realize that it's become memed. It's almost memed. It's stocks like GameStop right now. Jeez, that's undeserving. Right. It's a real company. It's really not.
Well, you were on air when we got word from the company.
Yeah, that was me.
Yep.
I mean, it was me. I said that last night to my wife. I said, hey, I broke this big story. I said, no, they called you. You went on air, and you said there was no subpoena. I said, will you give me a break? This is like something. Yes, I want people at home to know that what happens is that the company issues a release. Yeah. You get it first, and you come on air. It's a Scott Wapner show. Scott and Mike had me on, and what I just think that happened here is that there is a sense that as aggressive as this Justice Department may be, maybe they're not that aggressive.
Bill Baruch, you bought more NVIDIA.
Yep.
You bought more Dell, too, but I want to talk about buying more NVIDIA because here we go again, right? NVIDIA on the 5th was selling off hard. Rob Sechin saw that as an opportunity.
Yep.
Didn't own the stock. Now he owns the stock. Why'd you buy more here?
Well, if you remember, I did join you all on the 5th. I called in. At that time, I added Broadcom and I added to Meta. And just about a week and a half ago, I called in and trimmed Apple, Amazon, NVIDIA, Synopsys. I trimmed all these big names and raised cash. So my level in NVIDIA has been 106, 105. I see a lot of support in there. We're actually underweight NVIDIA, which was rare for me. And we came into the day at a 4.5% of NVIDIA. I mean, it's, what is it, 5.5 to 6% in the S&P. So what I did is add to NVIDIA and got it back up to about 5.5% weight here. I don't think there's anything I can say that we haven't already talked about, but the report was great. And I think right here, we're just kind of working through the motions. And a few months back, maybe by the end of the year, I think we'll be back above 130.
I mean, the report was great because, the report had to be great.
Yeah.
The question is, was it great enough relative to the price action in the stock, how much it had elevated, and the multiple? How would you address that?
So I actually had this conversation with Dan Ives right after the earnings report, and he reminded me of something that I think we all know, but we sometimes lose sight of when we get one quarter's worth of earnings. If you're bullish on NVIDIA right now, you're not bullish because they're going to do 76 cents in the next quarter, and you think they're going to do 79. If you're bullish in NVIDIA here, it's because you can envision a situation where 120 billion in revenue goes to 200 billion, and they have $5 a share in earnings power, and at $106 a share, it's way too cheap for that reality. Now, if you don't believe that that's the reality, whether it's a year from now or 2 years from now, okay, fine. But if you do, that's why you're in the stock. Not in the stock for any one particular quarter whisper number. Kind of ridiculous nonsense is that. So this has been my mentality. I'm in the stock 9 years. They've missed plenty of quarters. Missed whisper number, blah, blah, blah. Had issues with like the Bitcoin mining 1 quarter. All right, so the big concern about NVIDIA was, is Blackwell going to be delivered on time? And honestly, they pushed it back slightly. It's coming out this year. this fiscal year. That's the most important thing, and they came right out on the call. They punched the bears right in the face. They said, yes, it's coming out, and no, the changes that we're making to it have nothing to do with functionality.
And demand is incredible.
And demand is incredible, and it's, you know why it's delayed? No, 2 reasons. Number one, you can't have a glitch, obviously. People are going to build their entire AI architecture on top of this product. You can't have a recall. Okay. Number 2, though, and more importantly, capacity. The yield, which if you're manufacturing chips, this becomes very important for profitability. Yield is going up as a result of what's delaying, but they have the demand. The demand is there. The delay is slight. And so I think that was the most important takeaway from the call. And if you're focused on this story as a long-term investor, that's your most important takeaway.
That last week, one of our traders proposed a protective options play ahead of NVIDIA results. Now, you can see it right here. It actually turned out to be a correct and profitable trade, but now it's time to continue to manage around and risk manage that trade. Tony Zhang is back, the chief strategist over at Options Play. He's ready to explain what happened with that NVIDIA strategy and what we should do about it now. Tony, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Dom, what we did back then is we bought a September 123, 110 put spread for around $3.75. And earlier this morning, it was trading at around $9.75. That represents about 160% return on that put spread. But going into the job numbers tomorrow, I think it makes sense to actually adjust this strike price now, basically rolling down the debit spread to a lower strike price. I'm advocating going down to the same expiration, but moving it down to the 104.92 put spread. So very similar to the trade structure we put on last week, but we're just recentering it based on the current price because NVIDIA is now trading around that 107 level versus that 125, 126 was trading at about a week ago before that earnings report.
All right, and so how much is this trade going to cost? So you've realized a nice gain on the value of that last put spread. You got money to play with. How much are we taking out of that profit to put this new put protection in place?
Yeah, so we've gained about $6 on the put spread that we put on last week, and this one's only going to cost us about $3. So we're actually taking $3 in profits off the table and still getting further downside exposure going into the jobs numbers tomorrow, which is really why I'm putting on this trade. You know, we saw the job numbers last month cause quite a bit of volatility in the semiconductor space. I think that we could potentially see some softness going into the job numbers tomorrow, especially if you look at the JOLTS data that came out earlier this week. You look at the Fed survey number here for August showing fair amount of contraction in both manufacturing and services. I think we could see another disappointment tomorrow, and I think semis getting hit is likely going to be a trade that's going to play out with that type of theme. So which is why I'm playing this. I'm moving the strikes lower here and trying to get further protection for NVIDIA, or especially if you're invested in this particular stock, this would be a good way to potentially protect for further downside.
And Tony, again, this is what traders like yourself call a debit spread. It means you pay out for it. It means the most that you can lose is the amount of money that you paid for the option strategy. And then what is the upside? Can you tell us from there?
Yeah, so in this particular case, we have a $12 wide debit spread that we're paying $3 for. And that means you have about $9 of potential profits, or $900 of potential profits versus $300 worth of risk. So you have about a 3-to-1 risk to reward ratio if NVIDIA is below $92 at expiration, which is in about 15 days or so.
All right. Tony Zhang with the new trade on NVIDIA. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, I hope you're all having a great day today. I want to talk about the NVIDIA subpoena situation, and then I want to look at the chart after that. Really quick, though, I just want to mention that the Tesla swing trade I made a video on this past Monday is going very well. I'm very excited about this one. After a nice green day, yesterday Tesla finished today up nearly 5%. This is because of two things. News that full self-driving will soon expand to Europe and China, and of course the anticipation building for the upcoming robotaxi event on October 10th. As long as there is not another delay of the robotaxi event, and as long as the market can simply remain calm, I think Tesla still has meaningful upside ahead. We did close the day above the 50 MA on the daily time frame, which is very encouraging to see. In the short term, I want to see Tesla have a close above this 4-hour supply zone. And then following that, I would be watching for a close of the gap that formed back on July 23rd. We could run into some turbulence along the way, but overall, I still really like the setup on Tesla and therefore the setup on TSLL as well. TSLL finished today up nearly 10%. I'm very happy with this trade so far. If you want all the details on this trade, then feel free to watch the video I posted this past Monday. All right, so yesterday I posted a video on NVIDIA, and less than an hour after I posted that video, news broke that an NVIDIA spokesperson said they have not received a subpoena from the Justice Department. This is after Bloomberg reported on Tuesday that the DOJ sent a subpoena to NVIDIA related to a potential antitrust investigation. Now, if NVIDIA does not receive a subpoena, that is of course good news. At the same time though, I really don't think a subpoena would be a big deal for NVIDIA. If they receive a subpoena at some point in the future, it would just be a legally binding request for information. That's it. Additionally, I don't think investors are worried about NVIDIA being broken up or fined by regulators. As long as NVIDIA is not intentionally trying to keep their competitors out of the marketplace, then they should be just fine. They shouldn't have to worry about any antitrust violations. Now looking at NVIDIA's chart on the daily time frame. Last week I told you we were trading underneath the 50 MA, and I expected us to trade lower and retest the support trend line that stretches back to January of this year. Then on Tuesday of this week, we broke below the trend line, and then in after hours trading on Tuesday, the Bloomberg article came out and NVIDIA traded about $4 lower. Right now we are still underneath this trend line, and I'm looking to see if NVIDIA will gradually make its way lower toward historic support around $90 per share. I'm not saying this is going to happen immediately. It could take a number of days, and we could have some green days along the way. If NVIDIA were to dip toward $90 or even down into the 80s, I think that would be a great long-term buying opportunity in NVIDIA. As I've explained in many videos recently, the deceleration in NVIDIA's growth rate all comes down to the delay in Blackwell. And I would not be surprised if the growth rate were to reaccelerate at some point in the future once Blackwell is shipping in volume. In the short term, I think NVIDIA's price action will be largely dependent on the jobs report tomorrow morning. On Friday morning, we get non-farm payrolls, unemployment data, etc. And this report is very important because we are so close to the next FOMC meeting on September 18th when the Fed is expected to cut interest rates. Consensus estimates for non-farm payrolls is 160,000, and consensus estimates for the U.S. unemployment rate is 4.2%. If this jobs report comes in much worse than expected, then the market will likely trade lower tomorrow. And I mean noticeably lower, as fears of a potential recession would be revived. And get this. If this jobs report comes in much better than expected, that could also be perceived as a negative in the short term, because that would cause some market participants to question if the Fed will cut rates at all at the September meeting. So for this jobs report tomorrow, the ideal scenario for stocks would be that the report comes in line with expectations, not too hot and not too cold. If that is the case, then I think the market would overall be happy with the report, and that would be the best case scenario for stocks in the short term. If the jobs report is much better than expected or much worse than expected, then that is when we could potentially have a problem on our hands. So hopefully this report comes in close to consensus estimates. With all of that being said, I hope you're all having a great day and staying calm in this market. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.